Welcome, everybody, to the preseason rankings for our 2021 fantasy football season. I want to thank all the constituents this year for being understanding about the draft, having to move it around a little bit. Some people were getting frustrated moving the draft a day early just because we didn't want to hear the whining from certain members of the league. So we understand that. Sorry for anyone who feels slighted by the draft being moved up. But we're going to go into our power rankings 1 through 10 like we always do. This year, for the preseason rankings, I'm going to put 3 different tiers in the rank just because it's very hard to predict before we've seen any games this year exactly who's the top teams and bottom teams. Differentiating those teams in the middle is very difficult at this point in the season. So we're going to go with some tiers, and then we'll still rank them, but just know that we're really focusing on the tiers aspect of it this season. So first team at the bottom of our league, sorry to do this to you, Orby, but the Labor Pimps are going to be the number 10 team in our power rank to start off the year. And I think it's a pretty wide margin. 2 teams in the bottom tier for me this year. And Labor Pimps is going to be at the bottom of this bottom tier. So let's get into a reason why I've got the Labor Pimps down here. Let's go start off with these running backs that he drafted at the end of the first round at the 1-2 turn. Najee Harris, Antonio Gibson. Najee Harris, definitely a workhorse running back we expect this year. However, we don't know how that offensive line is going to stack up. The worst rated offensive line in the NFL. Yes, it's a volume play. We get it. But at some point, you need to be efficient. We've seen volume players like a Josh Jacobs from a year ago be top 10 running backs, but not provide round 1 draft capital just based off their performances. So just because you're a top 10 running back doesn't mean you're worth a first round pick. And I think that's the case here. Najee Harris, don't think he's necessarily a bust. I just don't think he hits that top 5 ceiling with that poor offensive line. But the volume play, I can understand it there. Antonio Gibson, I can't get behind Antonio Gibson right here with the fact that he's not a 3-down back. He's not on the field on 3rd down. It's a J.D. McKissic role. We saw it last year. J.D. McKissic leading the NFL in receptions last year. Without that receiving game work for Antonio Gibson, cannot see him being worth the first pick in the 2nd round right here. I think the upside's extremely limited without that full load. Also, this Washington football team, not exactly a powerhouse offense we've seen. Yes, Ryan Fitzpatrick is new in town. Everyone wants to get excited about that. Ryan Fitzpatrick, there's a reason he's going from team to team. He's not a great quarterback. Yeah, he's going to sling it around the field. But I don't think it gives Antonio Gibson the ceiling he needs without that receiving game work. Let's look at Alex Smith last year, really dink and dunk quarterback, throwing it underneath, i.e. a Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning at the twilight of their careers. So with Ryan Fitzpatrick, a more downfield threat, I'm not sure if Antonio Gibson has the upside we're looking for here. The wide receiver position, no problems here with Robert Woods, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, those are excellent. CeeDee Lamb has insane ceiling with Dak Prescott if he's able to be healthy. The Kyle Pitts pick is really the one that sticks out for me. I can't get behind Kyle Pitts. Yes, he's the number 1 prospect of all time, tight end position. But I mean, for him to be worth this value, he has to have the best tight end season for a rookie in NFL history. Yes, it's definitely possible, but definitely not a wager I'm looking to make with some of the wide receivers or even quarterbacks here on the list. Justin Herbert, not a bad pick here. I think he was a top 8 quarterback last year. We expect him to see the same amount of points unless he takes a super jump. But very solid quarterback there. Kyle Pitts, Antonio Gibson, really the 2 problems I have with this team. Why I have to put them in the basement. The number 9 team's going to be just a sucker for a 16-year-old. Hate to do this to you, Zebo. But you kind of drafted what you had last year. And yes, it could work out the way it did for you last year, but I don't see you getting that lucky. Not a huge fan of some of these picks right here. I'm looking at Saquon Barkley, I think is great value, the where he went. He's a super high ceiling player with this injury, coming off the ACL injury. We don't exactly know how he's going to perform, but I think getting him after those top running backs have gone off that late in the first round, I have no problem with that pick at all. Chris Carson, also a solid pick. You had him last year, worked out well. He's going to be a top end RB2, so getting him in the 4th round is really nice. Terry McLaurin, a little early for me, though. That's the main reason I'm not a huge fan of the roster. picking him over an Allen Robinson, who has solidified himself as a wide receiver one with any quarterback play he's seen in the past. Andy Dalton, potentially starting quarterback better than a Nick Foles and a Mitch Bum Trubisky. So I think Allen Robinson would have been my play here, but Terry McLaurin, I'm just not sold on Ryan Fitzpatrick being an elite quarterback that people think he is for fantasy. That team is going to be relying on their defense and running game. I just can't see Terry McLaurin being over some of the wide receivers still available at this point in time. Kareem Hunt worked out last year. However, he was extremely touchdown efficient last year. So I feel like he's going to see some touchdown regression. But he is an elite handcuff, and he does have flex value. So I'm not hating on that pick in general. But waiting to get your Tom Brady quarterback, I have no problem waiting on the quarterback. I would have rathered a Tannehill in round 13 as opposed to Tom Brady in the, I think, 9th round you got him. 4-round difference for those two guys. I think I'm easily going to take the Tannehill. I don't think the value is much different there as a points per game output for Tom Brady and Ryan Tannehill. So I think Tom Brady could have been waited on the quarterback position. Adam Thielen, I'm not a huge fan of Adam Thielen, but I will say the Irv Smith injury does improve Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, and Justin Jefferson's value, and Adam Thielen was slipping in the draft. So no real problem with there. The main issue is, for me, is going to be that Tom Brady, the Terry McLaurin, and the Saquon Barkley. It's a very risky pick, but I do agree with the pick there at Saquon. But not 9 here for me, just because it looked like you were drafting based off last year's production when we want to be drafting based off predicted future success. So, all right, next team we're going to go with is the former editor of the Fantasy Birds YouTube podcast. It's going to be Balls, the Gooch here at number 8 for us. I believe we're looking here. This is the separation for me. I think this team, and along with the teams I'm going to mention a little bit, a tier above those bottom 2 teams I just noted. Aaron Jones, Jonathan Taylor, starting running backs, 1st and 2nd round. Absolutely no problem with those. I think that's probably the picks I would have gone with in this situation. However, what would really start to get me not a fan of this team is the 3rd and 4th round picks, David Montgomery, Deontay Johnson. I understand you got to go get your guys. Deontay Johnson was listed as a top value target when he was going as the 60th overall player in drafts, not at 36 or 37 in that range where he was drafted. So a little bit of a reach for me. Deontay Johnson, definitely a volume play here with over 140 targets from a season ago. So if Deontay Johnson is able to be that wide receiver one, this is a great pick. I mean, obviously, but the likelihood that he's with the low average depth of target Deontay Johnson sees, I'm not sure if I want him as my wide receiver one. I think he's a great wide receiver 2, 3 with huge upside. Just a very risky play to be counted on as your wide receiver one. But when you have those top running backs, you got to go get somebody. It's just, this wouldn't have been the guy for me right here in the 3rd and 4th round. David Montgomery should see a boost now that Tariq Cohen is out for the foreseeable future. However, I'm still not a huge David Montgomery fan. Don't think he's a very talented running back. Him and Damian Williams should see a more crowded split, I believe, this year than people are expecting. But I can't knock the David Montgomery pick now that Tariq Cohen is out. So he should see some receiving usage more than what we thought 2 months ago when he was listed on the do not draft list. This Brandon Ayuk as your wide receiver 2, no problem here. It's Tyler Lockett, I'm not a huge fan of Tyler Lockett. However, the value was there in the draft. He did slip a round and a half later than we expected. So Tyler Lockett, I can understand going to get him. The Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones stack. People want to say that you can't really stack running backs and quarterbacks. However, I think when you're picking a quarterback and a running back from the same team, you're really investing in the total offense. So I think it is still a worthwhile stack. Considering if Aaron Jones is going to be an effective RB1 as you drafted him to be, Aaron Rodgers is going to have to put up a very excellent season. They're going to be moving the ball, and it's going to be based on that quarterback. So no problem with that stack there, especially Aaron Rodgers waiting to get that quarterback. I really do like that pick. Logan Thomas, I know ESPN loves Logan Thomas, but however, I've talked about it with Ryan Fitzpatrick, keeps coming up in this episode, but Alex Smith was very low average depth of target on most of his throws later in his career, and Logan Thomas was a big beneficiary of that. A lot of targets near the line of scrimmage. I don't expect Logan Thomas to see that target share this year with a Curtis Samuel coming in. I know he's got an injury, but J.D. McKissick, Terry McLaurin should be involved in this offense. So I know Mike Clay is in love with Logan Thomas, but I'm not sold on him really. Raheem Mostert, I'm not a fan of Raheem Mostert. I think he will provide extreme. He's gonna be very good in the beginning of the season. I will give you that, Raheem Mostert. However, a 29-year-old running back with one game in his entire career of 20 carries or more, not a workhorse back. Yes, we know you don't have to be a workhorse back in this 49ers offense because they're going to be so efficient the way that Shanahan runs that team. But it's just a matter of time before Mostert just breaks down and his career is going to be over. So I'm not a huge fan of Mostert, even though I do think he is a very solid running back in the beginning of this season coming up. Kadarius Toney, I have no words. I mean, he should not be on rosters. That's a worthless pick. Traquan Smith, I have no problem with that. Everyone's hyping up Marquez Callaway, but Traquan Smith been in this offense for 4 years now. No problem with Traquan Smith being there as a late round dart throw. Yeah, like I said, this team really not a bad team in my opinion. So it just goes along with these middle tier teams that I'm gonna talk about next. But the wide receiver jump with Deontay Johnson and Dave Montgomery right there, the only reason I got to put this team lower than I feel like it could have been if it stuck to the rankings that ESPN had in that third round. All right, coming in at number 7, I believe we're at just above the Gooch at number 8. We got the lowly loser Simpy Virgins. This team obviously had a strategy going in and wanted to solidify itself with that top end tight end. And yes, when you take a Travis Kelce, it's not going to make your roster look as sexy as it really is. I get that. So maybe a little bit biased there. However, I do understand Travis Kelce is a monster pick in the first round. No problem there. The running backs in set 2, 3, and 4, the rounds. I'm not sure if I would have gone with this strategy in a 3 wide receiver league. However, this team will be dependent on these running backs. You need one of these running backs to absolutely explode and be a top 5 running back. You can't just get low-end RB1 production from these guys and expect to be a powerhouse team. So I think Austin Eckler, Clyde, and or James Robinson are going to need to outplay their ADP, and I think it's going to have to be Clyde because Austin Eckler, we know he's going to be a solid running back. I don't think he can reach the top 4 or 5 running backs without that touchdown efficiency unless they start giving him goal line carries. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's going to need to get those touchdowns up from a year ago. That was the only reason he didn't perform well last year with the Le'Veon Bell signing. If Clyde can get those goal line touchdowns with that Mahomes, Travis Kelce team moving the ball, this team is going to be scary. However, when you go your first wide receiver in round 5 in a 3 wide receiver league, it's gonna be cause for concern for me. T. Higgins, Cortland Sutton, yes, they're good options, but to be relying on those guys to be scoring points to keep up with the other wide receivers that you're going to be facing on a weekly basis, that's not something I want to put my team through. And yeah, we got the Mike Thomas in round 8, so he projects to be your wide receiver 1 come then, but we don't actually know if Mike Thomas is going to play in week 7. But he's out for 6 weeks. We get it, but coming off that ankle injury, it's not Michael Thomas is not somebody I want to be relying on to be performing for my team when your wide receiver core is looking like this. Dak Prescott, I have no problem with Dak Prescott. He would have been my pick in this round. There's really a dead zone in the wide receivers right here. That's why I think you got to go get one of the wide receivers in the beginning of the draft, first 2 or 3 rounds. Didn't end up doing that. Went with the James Robinson. James Robinson could very well be a great running back like he was last year, but it's an entirely new offense. So I don't think it's wise to say that we can project James Robinson to do exactly what he did last year. Totally new offense, totally new coach. I can't see James Robinson being a top 5 running back like he was last year. But one of these 3 running backs needs to provide top 5 running back value for this team to make a splash. Otherwise, the wide receivers are going to be just dragging this team to the ground on a weekly basis. Following up with the same tier, we're going to go with the big men making a splash trade. I still don't understand this trade. If you're going to go ahead and go number 3 overall, choosing number 3, and then trade your 2nd and 3rd round picks, why wouldn't you just take number two position, draft your Kamara there, and then get your guys. But it's not. It doesn't end up being a big deal anyway. Kamara, can't go wrong with Kamara with the Jameis Winston offense. Love that pick. Keenan Allen and Joe Mixon. I think everyone's down on Joe Mixon, although I see him being no different from a Najee Harris and a Antonio Gibson in that value range. I don't see how you can think Najee Harris is going to be a great running back when Joe Mixon, arguably very similar in talent, very similar in offensive line construction, and maybe even a better offense when you consider Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd on the outside. Jalen Hurts, a quarterback, really, I'm not a huge fan. I think you got to solidify yourself with a quarterback other than Jalen Hurts on the bench if you're going to roll with him. Huge upside, but I think huge low floor as he's not a great NFL quarterback. The running will be there, but I don't know if running will be able to carry him to a productive season. Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, very solid wide receivers. That's why I gave him the edge over some of the teams we listed previously. Keenan Allen's not a sexy name by any means, but he's going to give you that production. We've seen it 3 of the last 4 years, over 1,000 yards receiving. Very, very consistent player. So Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper really a big reason why I do like this team over the teams we just listed. But that solid quarterback, I can't be overly excited about this big man team, the reigning champ. So big man coming in at number 6. All right, at number 5, we're going to go with the Liberty Bowl of Sriracha. This is going to be the last team in this tier for me, and then we're going to have a step up for the next couple teams. Really love what Sriracha did here. Davante Adams, huge pick for me in the first round. I mean, the best wide receiver season of all time in fantasy football history last year on a per-game basis. Ridiculous pick there. You can only assume that he's going to provide similar production this year. Nothing changing that offense. Nick Chubb, yeah, he doesn't have the elite ceiling without the reception game, but he's such a consistent player with that running game in Cleveland. That offensive line should be a monster unit again this year. Love Nick Chubb in the second round. Then you follow that up with an Allen Robinson, Miles Sanders stack. Miles Sanders not getting a lot of love this year. However, I think the running game will be good in Philadelphia, as they're going to be relying on the running game, as they're not the passing game with Jalen Hurts, like we talked about. Not super excited about it. So Miles Sanders, Allen Robinson, models for consistency. Allen Robinson. We talk about the Keenan Allen. So is Allen Robinson. He's done it with every bad quarterback you throw at him. He's only looking better with Andy Dalton and potentially Justin Fields. So really like that pick. Julio Jones as the wide receiver 3. I don't know. Everyone's down on Julio Jones. The 32-year-old wide receiver. Yes. He's able to stay healthy. There's no reason Julio Jones will not be a top 20 wide receiver. On a per-game basis, he's going to be a top 20 wide receiver. It's just a matter of if he can stay healthy. But fading Julio Jones to the 5th round, no problem with that value there for the Sriracha Blanco. Went a little auto draft at the end here, it appears. But some very solid options on his bench with a Marvin Jones, Michael Gallup, Damian Harris, and Jared Jeudy. So I think just a super deep team. Really like what Sriracha Blanco did here. Russell Wilson late, no problems there. I mean, other than tight end with Dallas Goedert, I think Dallas Goedert's one of the most overdrafted tight ends we've seen. Zach Ertz still being there. I have no reason to be drafting Dallas Goedert, in my opinion, in the starting lineup. So other than tight end, I think this team is super stacked, super deep, and that's why he's the number 1 team in this second tier for me, coming in number 5, Sriracha Blanco.
Next team we're going to talk about at number 4 is going to be the PEDs, formerly known as PEDs. We're going to bring them at number 4, even with the auto draft in the second half of the draft, just based off the top 5 rounds. I mean, these first 5 rounds could not have gone any better, in my opinion, for the PEDs. Josh Allen, Steph Diggs stack, unbelievable upside right there with those 2 players. And then you come in with a Cooper Kupp, unbelievable talent right there. Considering the guys, yes, he did reach for Cooper Kupp according to ADP. But he's a very valuable wide receiver. You love him as your wide receiver 2 under Steph Diggs. And grabbing that elite tight end in George Kittle in round 3, when we've seen the tight end position be very weak across the board and getting even weaker with Irv Smith injury, Adam Troutman injury across the board with tight ends. You got to love grabbing a tight end early, especially with all these injuries. And then you got your workhorse running back with Ezekiel Elliott. So you really can't go wrong with these first 5 picks. Chase Edmonds, yes, I'm not high on as your RB2, considering he has not been a goal line back in his career. So the touchdowns may not be there for your RB2. So you're relying on extreme volume. I'm not sure if Edmonds can give you that, but Chase Claypool pick up as your flex. I mean, super high upside. Chase Claypool is able to be a top 15 wide receiver. I mean, it's going to be hard to stop the PEDs this year once again. But with Big Ben's arm being where it is today, I mean, the likelihood of a downfield threat Claypool being super, super nice in fantasy, a little bit lower. So Kenny Galladay being slept on. Yes, he was a bust for us given the draft capital you had to give up earlier with a round 4 pick, but getting him this late in drafts, I mean, Kenny Galladay, people will forget he's still a very talented wide receiver, even with the Daniel Jones in this New York Giants offense. We still project Kenny Galladay or Chase Claypool to be very productive. I like that pairing right there for where you got them in drafts. But PED's bench, I mean, the auto draft obliterated this. There's barely any serviceable pieces on this bench. And, that's the cost of doing business when you got certain league members forcing the draft up against other people's wishes. But you got to roll with the punches. PED's looking very solid with the first 5 picks. So I'm not too worried about him there. Team win getting criticized by other members of the league for what he's done in the past with our league. But very solid draft for Team Win. I like what he did here. Yes, he grabbed a Derrick Henry, who doesn't have a very high ceiling with no receiving upside like a Nick Chubb. But Derrick Henry, we've seen the workload be absolutely insane, giving and taking beatings on a weekly basis. Yes, he's an older running back, so we don't love the profile there, but you really can't go wrong. If he's not getting injured, he's going to provide solid floor for you as the RB1. Missing out on that Steph Diggs, really tough in round 2, but Calvin Ridley is a very nice consolation prize, so we're not too worried about that. And then a Justin Jefferson falling in the 3rd round without Irv Smith, so we're expecting more touchdowns to be sprinkled throughout the offense for the wide receivers. Justin Jefferson in the 3rd round is a smash pick. DeAndre Swift coming into the season with an injury, so you're a little worried about that. But his receiving upside in an offense that should be looking at poor game script, constantly down, looking to throw the ball. Jared Goff average depth of target very low, so we like DeAndre Swift near the line of scrimmage, getting those receptions, potentially making him a top 15 running back. Gus Edwards, Gus Edwards very similar to Derrick Henry in the fact that he's not going to catch any passes, but the rushing efficiency is going to be there for Gus Edwards. I mean, Lamar Jackson is going to provide such a high quality running attack for Baltimore that really getting 10 to 15 touches is going to be so key. Look at the bench with a Trey Sermon pick late. If he pans out, this team's actually going to be crazy down the stretch. We love Trey Sermon. Definitely a snipe job on that one. Zach Moss, couple Corey Davis, these guys that, yeah, I mean, they're not going to be super valuable players, but they could provide weekly flex appeal. So in a deeper league where you have 3 wide receivers and a flex, you really get to have a bench that can support it. So I think Team Win, he put the roster out there. He filled it out pretty nicely. That's why we got him in number Team 3. However, if Derrick Henry can't provide the floor that we expect, if his body starts to break down like we expect running backs to do at this age, this team's going nowhere. At number 2, we have the anti-Saxers picking up a Christian McCaffrey, such an elite player. Really hard to go wrong there. DK Metcalf, Darren Waller, the tight end premium that we expect with given the fact that we've talked about the tight end injuries. I really like that. It's not a sexy pick, just like a Travis Kelce is not the sexiest pick, but it's really going to elevate your team. Darrell Henderson, this is really going to be the key for this team, in my opinion. If Darrell Henderson is able to be a low-end RB2, this team's going to go crazy. Yes, the running back room is very bleak with only a James Conner on the bench. However, with a Christian McCaffrey, he's really 2 RBs in 1. So I'm not too worried about that for this team. Lamar Jackson, he needs to keep that rushing ability. Without a J.K. Dobbins, we expect Lamar to only increase in his rushing usage. So really like that. And then filling out Chris Godwin, DJ Moore, the tier drop off at this 3 with that 4 or 5 turn in the draft was pretty steep. I'm not gonna lie. So Chris Godwin, DJ Moore, not the best situation, but you can be doing a lot worse as your wide receiver 2 and 3. and flex position. So not too worried about this. This team's pretty deep. Backup quarterback Ryan Tannehill, not really meaning much, but Laviska Shenault should provide without a Travis Etienne that kind of gadget player that Urban Meyer loves. We expect a higher volume. DJ Chark coming in with an injury. We still love DJ Chark, but Laviska Shenault and Antonio Brown, two high floor guys that we think not necessarily going to win you leagues, but definitely could aid in you a flex spot on bye week. So big fan of this team as long as everyone can stay healthy. All right, our number one team heading into 2021 is going to be Ave Maria. Very solid team name. Applause there. But when you secure a Dalvin Cook and then you're able to get a DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Brown at the 2-3 turn, I mean, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to make the playoffs. These guys, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins hasn't missed a game in who knows how long. Very, very consistent player. You pair that with AJ Brown, the elite upside, and people want to say, "Oh, Julio Jones in town. He's not going to get the volume." I mean, that's such a bad take. I don't even need to give it time of day. But Dalvin Cook's as your RB1 holding it down. Yeah, we don't like a Miles Gaskin. I think this is the only pick that I don't agree with on this team. But getting that Kyler Murray in the 6th round, I mean, that is beautiful value, especially when you pair him with the DeAndre Hopkins. Absolutely brilliant right there. Tight end position, yes, it's going to be weak with a Jonnu Smith, but Mac Jones should increase Jonnu Smith's value versus a Cam Newton. So we do like the Jonnu Smith. If you're not going to go get one of those elite tight ends, he's a good one to have. But I think he's going to need to find a running back too to fill this hole. I don't trust Miles Gaskin. I don't know. He's really a receiving back. I don't think he could take the workload of a 3-down back. And I think they have other running backs they want to use to supplement the goal line and other carries throughout the game. So I really can't get behind that Miles Gaskin pick. But every other pick on this team, I mean, it's very, very brilliant draft from Ave Maria. Applause there. So that's going to be our top 10 rankings heading into 2021. 3 different tiers that we had. It, like I said, it's very hard to predict fantasy football rankings, not like fantasy basketball, but we did our best job. We didn't even take a look at the ESPN final standings, but this is going to be our top 10 heading into 2021.